In this life, every one of us has moments we wish we could take back. A word spoken too quickly, an action done in haste, a thought that carried us away. These small moments, these gentle missteps, are not failures. They are part of being human. Each one holds a quiet lesson, a doorway through which understanding and compassion can enter. What seems like a mistake is often the very thing that helps us grow. Welcome to Moonlight Temple, a place where stories of stillness and ancient wisdom softly meet the rhythms of everyday life. Tonight, we'll walk together through the simple yet profound truths found in Buddhist teachings and timeless Zen reflections, where even our most ordinary experiences become teachers. Here, we do not run from the past or try to erase what has been done. Instead, we learn to see it clearly, to hold it gently, and to let it guide us toward peace. Throughout this journey, you'll hear stories from Buddhist tradition, words of the Buddha that illuminate forgiveness, patience, and understanding, and everyday insights you can bring into your own life, moments that help you breathe easier, speak kinder, and rest deeper. These are not just teachings for monks or scholars. They are lessons for hearts that wish to live more freely. Let us begin this quiet reflection together. If these stories bring you comfort or clarity, we invite you to stay close, to listen, to breathe, and to be part of this circle of light. Subscribe and journey with us here at Moonlight Temple, where every trottler becomes a step toward awakening. Chapter 1. Born into the world of dust, learning to accept our circumstances. Before we begin, let us take a gentle pause to reflect on the nature of being human. None of us chose exactly where we were born, the family we came to, or the challenges that shaped us. Yet every condition we encounter carries a hidden purpose. In the teachings of the Buddha, even the smallest circumstance is a teacher. When we stop resisting where we are, life itself becomes a sacred classroom for awakening. Long before he became the Buddha, the awakened one who understood the nature of all things, he lived through countless lives, each one shaped by love, loss, patience, and imperfection. The scriptures tell of him as a prince, a hermit, a bird, a king, a beggar, a saint, and even as an animal, again and again, moving through the endless cycles of birth and death. Every life was a lesson, every difficulty, a teacher. Each existence was a preparation for awakening. In one life, he was born as a wise deer who offered his own life to save another. In another, he was a compassionate king who gave away his wealth so that no one would starve. There was a lifetime when he lived as a humble woodcutter, quietly offering his labor for the good of others. And there were also lives of error and struggle, moments when ignorance clouded his heart, when he too suffered the pain of misunderstanding and attachment. But through it all, one truth became clear. Nothing in life is wasted. Every moment, no matter how small or difficult, is part of the great unfolding of wisdom. The Buddha did not reach enlightenment by escaping the world. He awakened by living through it, again and again, until compassion became his very nature. Each birth and death, each joy and sorrow, deepened his understanding of impermanence. Every time he met suffering, he met it fully. He did not turn away. He did not hide behind spiritual ideals. He lived through the dust of the world, the same dust that touches our own lives. Today, this is what makes his story so profoundly human. He did not descend from the heavens untouched by pain. He walked the same earth we walk. He felt hunger, loss, loneliness, and despair. But instead of letting those experiences harden his heart, he allowed them to soften him, to open him wider to the suffering of others. The dust of the world did not stain him, it polished him. Like a stone smoothed by the river's current, each trial shaped him into the being of compassion we now call the Buddha. Once, during his life as Prince Siddhartha, he lived surrounded by luxury and comfort, unaware of the world's deeper truths. It was only when he stepped outside the palace and saw the old, the sick, and the dying that something awakened within him. For the first time, he realized that no one, not even a prince, can escape suffering. That moment of awakening did not come in silence or meditation, but in confrontation with life itself. He saw suffering, and in seeing it, his heart opened. He began his journey not by leaving the world, but by seeing it clearly for what it is. Later, as the Buddha, he would teach that our lives, no matter how they appear, are not random accidents. Every condition we are born into is the ripening of karma, the natural law of cause and effect. But karma is not punishment. It is the unfolding of learning. It is the continuity of our actions, intentions, and choices. In this way, the story of the Buddha's many lifetimes is not only his story, it is also ours. We too have walked through lifetimes of joy and loss, of learning and forgetting, of kindness and anger. Each experience leaves a trace, a seed, and those seeds blossom into the circumstances of this present life. The old Buddhist texts say that being born as a human being is a rare and precious opportunity. It is said that it is harder to be born human than for a turtle to rise once every 100 years and happen to poke its head through a small wooden ring floating on the vast ocean. That is how rare this chance is, to be aware, to have the ability to reflect, to learn, to grow in wisdom. So if we are here, breathing and listening, it means we already possess something sacred, the capacity to awaken. But awakening does not come through denial or escape. It begins with acceptance. Accepting this very life, this body, this family, this situation. The Buddha's journey through countless lives was not a rejection of existence, but a deep embrace of it. Each birth gave him a chance to understand compassion more fully. Each challenge was a teacher that led him closer to peace. To be born into the world of dust is to be born into imperfection. Dust is not dirty. It is made of everything that has ever lived: soil, stars, leaves, and bones. It is the essence of life itself. When the Buddha looked upon the dust, he did not see impurity. He saw the shared fabric of all beings. He saw that everything, our joys and our griefs, are made of the same essence. When we understand this, acceptance becomes natural. We stop dividing life into good and bad, right and wrong. We simply see things as they are, arising and passing in their own time. The story of the Buddha's many births reminds us that we are not here by mistake. We are here because the universe, in its quiet wisdom, has placed us in the exact conditions we need to grow. Perhaps we were born into hardship so we could learn strength. Perhaps we were born into comfort so we could learn gratitude. Perhaps we were born into confusion so we could learn to see clearly. Each path is different, yet all are leading toward the same awakening, the same gentle realization that everything, even our suffering, can serve love. When we hear of the Buddha's endless journey through birth and death, it is easy to think it belongs to another realm, far from our daily lives. But in truth, it mirrors the small cycles we live each day, the moments we fall and rise, lose and find, despair and hope. Every sunrise is a new birth. Every night we rest is a small death. Every mistake is an ending, and every realization is a beginning. Life keeps offering us these tiny chances to awaken, over and over, just as it did for the Buddha. So when we look at our own lives, at the places where we struggle, at the family we were born into, the body we live in, the conditions we wish were different. Remember this story. Remember that even the Buddha was born into the dust. He too walked through confusion, sorrow, and loss. And through it all, he found the path of peace, not by running from the world, but by loving it exactly as it was. This is the essence of the story, the first teaching hidden in the dust of existence. Acceptance is not giving up. It is awakening to the truth that where you are right now is where your practice begins. The Buddha's many lives are not meant to inspire awe, but to remind us that growth is slow, sacred, and deeply human. Each of us, in our own quiet way, is walking the same path, learning to accept the life we have been given and to let it open the heart to something infinitely kind. Part 2. The teaching, the law of karma, and the wisdom of acceptance. In the heart of the Buddha's teaching lies a truth that can feel both simple and difficult to grasp. Everything that happens because of causes and conditions. The world is not random, nor is it ruled by punishment or reward. It moves through the quiet rhythm of cause and effect, what we call karma. But karma is not a heavy word of destiny. It is the flow of energy shaped by intention. Every thought, word, and action plants a seed, and those seeds eventually ripen into the experiences of our lives. This is not about blame. The Buddha never taught that suffering comes because we are bad. He taught that suffering comes because we are human, and because we sometimes act from confusion instead of clarity. When we do, we plant seeds of pain without realizing it. But the beautiful thing is that we can also plant new seeds of patience, compassion, and understanding, and over time, those too will ripen. This is why he said that the present moment is our field of practice. The past has already been planted. The future will bloom from the seeds we choose to place in the soil of today. The Buddha often used the image of the farmer. Imagine a farmer standing in his field, holding a handful of seeds. If he scatters them carelessly on hard, dry ground, they will not grow. But if he tills the soil, waters it, and places the seeds with mindfulness, the field will bloom with abundance. Our lives are just like that. We cannot control the weather, but we can tend to the ground of our own heart. We can make it a place where kindness takes root. Understanding karma does not mean we must analyze every event and wonder what caused it. It is more about trust, trusting that life unfolds with meaning, even when we do not yet understand it. The Buddha taught that each person's path is unique. We are born into our families, bodies, and circumstances not as mistakes, but as opportunities. Sometimes the hardest situations are the ones that awaken our deepest wisdom. There is a teaching that says, when the heart is ready, the lesson appears. This means that everything we encounter, every joy, every heartbreak, is part of our awakening. Nothing is wasted. When we see this, we stop asking, why me? And begin to ask, what can I learn from this? That simple change in perspective turns suffering into practice. Acceptance, then, is not passivity. It is not saying, I can't change anything. It is seeing things as they are, without fighting them, so that we can respond with clarity. The Buddha often reminded his disciples that the first step toward peace is seeing clearly. We suffer most when we want life to be other than what it is, but when we see things as they are, our resistance softens and wisdom naturally arises. One of his disciples once came to him in deep despair. He said, "Master, why was I born into such hardship? I have worked hard all my life, yet my path is full of struggle." The Buddha listened quietly and then said, You are like a traveler walking through a forest. The road is uneven, the roots twist beneath your feet, and the journey feels long. But if you look closely, every step is leading you out of the woods. The rough ground is not your enemy, it is the way itself. When we hear this, we begin to understand our circumstances are not obstacles to our spiritual life, they are our spiritual life. The people who challenge us, the limitations we face, the dreams that fail to bloom, these are not punishments. They are mirrors showing us where our compassion and understanding can still grow. The Buddha's wisdom was not about escaping suffering but about transforming our relationship with it. He called this the middle way, the path between denial and despair. Denial tries to pretend that pain does not exist. Despair believes that pain is all there is. The middle way walks gently between them, acknowledging both joy and sorrow as parts of one great life. It teaches us to bow to each moment, knowing it carries the seeds of awakening. The teaching of acceptance does not mean we stop caring or trying to improve our world. Rather, it means we learn to act without hatred, to work without bitterness, to face change without fear. We can take responsibility for our lives without falling into guilt. We can seek justice without losing compassion. When the Buddha spoke of karma, he was not warning us, he was freeing us. He was showing us that we are not powerless. We can always choose how to respond, right now, in this moment. There is a gentle paradox here. The moment we accept life as it is, we begin to change it. When we stop fighting the present, our energy returns. We can see clearly again. We stop wasting our strength on wishing the past were different, and we start to build peace in the only place it can ever exist, here and now. In the teachings, acceptance is often paired with gratitude. The two walk hand in hand. When we accept what is, gratitude naturally arises because we begin to see the gifts hidden within the challenges. We realize that the difficult people in our lives are teaching us patience. The moments of loss are teaching us the preciousness of love. The times of uncertainty are teaching us trust. Each circumstance becomes a teacher if we are willing to learn. The Buddha once said that a lotus cannot bloom without the mud. It grows from the darkness beneath the water, reaching toward the light. The mud is not separate from the flower, it is part of its beauty. So too with our lives. The difficulties we wish we could escape are the very conditions that allow wisdom and compassion to take root. Without them, we would remain asleep, never seeing the truth of our own hearts. When we understand this, a deep peace begins to grow. We stop comparing our lives to others. We stop wishing for a different past. We start to see that every life, including ours, is perfectly placed in the vast tapestry of the universe. This does not mean everything is pleasant or easy. It means that everything belongs, even the dust, even the tears. In the stillness of acceptance, the heart opens naturally. Compassion flows without effort. We begin to see that everyone, ourselves included, is doing their best within the limits of their understanding. From this recognition comes forgiveness, and from forgiveness, freedom. To be born into this world of dust is to be invited into a sacred journey, a journey of remembering, of awakening, of learning how to live with an open heart. The Buddha's teaching of karma is not about fate but about transformation. It tells us that we are not bound by what has been, we are shaped by what we choose now. When we embrace where we are, with all its imperfections, we begin to live as the Buddha lived, not above the world, but within it, awake to its beauty and its pain. We begin to understand that enlightenment is not somewhere far away. It is the quiet acceptance of this very moment, this breath, this life. And in that understanding, the dust of the world no longer blinds us, it shines. Part 3. The practice, turning life into a living classroom. When the Buddha spoke about the path to peace, he never separated spiritual practice from daily life. He did not teach that awakening could only be found on a mountaintop or in a monastery. He reminded his disciples that every moment, every encounter, every difficulty is part of the practice itself. The way we speak, the way we listen, the way we respond when life feels unfair, all of it reveals the depth of our understanding. To live wisely is not to escape the world, but to walk through it with a steady and gentle heart. In our modern lives, we often feel torn between what we wish for and what we have. We think peace will come when the conditions are finally right, when the job improves, when the relationship heals, when the future feels secure. But the Buddha's wisdom invites us to begin right where we are. He taught that suffering does not come from life itself, it comes from our resistance to life. When we stop saying this shouldn't be happening, the heart begins to soften. In that softening, something sacred begins to emerge: acceptance, patience, and peace. Imagine that life is a great school, and each experience is a lesson written just for you. Some lessons are easy and joyful, others feel like examinations that test the limits of your patience. The Buddha called this the way of understanding through direct experience. He did not ask us to blindly believe his words, but to see for ourselves. When something painful happens, can we pause long enough to ask, "What is this teaching me?" That question alone can change everything. It turns suffering into a teacher, not an enemy. There is a story told in the old Buddhist texts about a man who went to the Buddha with tears in his eyes. He said, "Master, I try so hard to be kind, yet people still speak harshly to me. Why do I face this pain when I mean no harm?" The Buddha looked at him with compassion and replied, "You are like a musician who plays a beautiful melody in the marketplace. Some will stop and listen with joy, others will walk by without hearing a single note. But the music is not wasted, it touches those who are ready to hear. Keep playing." This simple story reminds us that our goodness may not always be recognized, our efforts not always rewarded, but goodness itself is never lost. Like a seed planted deep in the soil, it will one day bear fruit. In the meantime, we are asked to continue, to keep doing what is right, not because the world approves, but because it is the way to peace. Acceptance does not mean indifference. It is the courage to meet each moment exactly as it is, without pretending or running away. When we practice acceptance, we begin to see beauty even in imperfection. The cracks in our plans, the delays, the detours, they are not mistakes. They are the very texture of human life. As the Buddha said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." That peace is not found in a perfect situation, but in a heart that can rest with things as they are. In a world that moves quickly, we can easily forget this. We are taught to chase success, to fix every flaw, to avoid discomfort at all costs. Yet the more we run from discomfort, the more restless we become. The practice of acceptance teaches us to pause, to breathe, to look, to listen deeply. It reminds us that we can find peace even in the middle of chaos. When we stop fighting life, life begins to open itself to us in a new way. Consider how the rain falls on every roof without choosing. Some roofs are made of gold, others of straw, but the rain does not discriminate. In the same way, life gives us both, sunshine and storm, each serving a purpose. The rain nourishes the seeds of compassion, while the sun gives light to our understanding. Without both, the garden of our heart cannot grow. To apply this in daily life means practicing gentleness with ourselves. When we fail, instead of harsh judgment, we offer understanding. I am learning, just like everyone else. When others hurt us, we remember that they too are caught in their own storms. To accept life is to accept our shared humanity, to see that we are all walking through the same dust, each of us trying, in our own way, to find the light. The Buddha taught that awareness transforms everything it touches. When we are aware, we begin to see the patterns of our own reactions. We notice how quickly we resist, how easily we cling, how often we wish for something else. Awareness does not scold or condemn, it simply sees, and that seeing itself brings freedom. We cannot change what we refuse to see, but the moment we see clearly, transformation has already begun. Sometimes, acceptance begins in very small ways. It can be as simple as noticing a traffic jam and instead of complaining, using that moment to breathe, or feeling the sting of someone's harsh words and choosing to respond with calm instead of anger. These may seem like small acts, but each one is a victory of awareness over reactivity, of peace over chaos. Each one is a quiet step toward liberation. In the Zen tradition, there is a saying, "Before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood and carry water." It reminds us that wisdom does not remove us from daily life. It deepens it. We still cook, clean, work, love, and lose, but we do so with awareness. Every ordinary act becomes sacred when done with a peaceful heart. The Buddha's life is proof that awakening is possible for anyone, anywhere. He was not born enlightened. He became enlightened through living fully, through touching every shade of human experience. He knew joy and grief, success and disappointment. Through each of these, he discovered that the heart can remain open no matter what the world brings. And that is the deepest form of acceptance, to be unshaken not because life is easy, but because our understanding has become steady like the earth. When we see life as a living classroom, we stop running from it. We start listening. We begin to notice the lessons written in the laughter of a child, in the silence of a sunrise, in the fragility of our own breath. Every experience becomes a scripture, every challenge a teacher. Slowly, the question, "Why is this happening to me?" transforms into, "What is this showing me?" And in that moment, we begin to awaken to a peace that nothing can take away. To live this way is to walk the Buddha's path in our own modern world. It is to bow before each day, not because it is perfect, but because it is real. It is to meet joy and sorrow with the same gentle awareness, knowing that both are part of the sacred dust that makes us who we are. When we accept the world of dust as our home, we begin to see that enlightenment is not a distant mountain to climb, but the quiet understanding that even here, in the middle of imperfection, everything is already shining. You are listening to a gentle teaching from the Moonlight Temple series, wisdom drawn from ancient Buddhist roots, brought to life with care and presence. To fully receive the heart of these teachings, I invite you now to pause. Soften the edges of your day. Let your body rest. Take in a slow, quiet breath and exhale into stillness. Allow your awareness to return, not to the past, not to the future, but to this very moment. Nothing else is required, just your presence. If this offering has brought you a moment of peace, we gently invite you to support this journey by subscribing to the Moonlight Temple, sharing these teachings, or simply returning again when your heart needs rest. Every small, act of presence helps this temple of silence grow. Chapter 2. Misunderstandings. When to explain, when to stay silent. There are moments when our intentions are pure, yet our actions are seen through the clouded eyes of misunderstanding. No matter how gently we live, others may still misread our heart. In these times, wisdom lies not in defending ourselves at all costs, but in discerning whether words will bring clarity or only deepen confusion. Sometimes, truth needs to be spoken. Other times, silence becomes the truest expression of peace. Part 1. The story. The monk who was accused. Once, during the time of the Buddha, there lived a humble monk who devoted his life to the path of mindfulness and compassion. He lived simply, owning nothing more than a robe and a begging bowl. Every day, he went from house to house, receiving small offerings of food and offering blessings in return. His days were quiet, filled with prayer, meditation, and service to those in need. Yet even a life of peace does not escape the storms of the world. One day, a rumor began to spread through the village. A young woman claimed that she was expecting a child and said that this monk was the father. The words moved swiftly, as words often do. People who had once greeted him with respect now turned their faces away. They whispered behind his back, mocked him in the streets, and questioned his integrity. The monk listened to the noise of their voices but said nothing. He bowed his head and continued his path, accepting each day as it came. In time, the child was born. The girl's family, furious and ashamed, brought the baby to the monk. "This is yours," they said harshly. "You have brought disgrace upon us all. Take responsibility." The monk looked at the child resting in their arms, small, innocent, fragile, and he simply said, "Is that so?" Then, with calmness and care, he took the baby into his arms. He found milk from nearby villagers and cared for the child as his own. Months passed. The young woman, overwhelmed by guilt and unable to bear the weight of her lie, finally confessed the truth. The child's father was not the monk at all, but a man from a neighboring village. The townspeople were shocked, ashamed. They came to the monk and begged for forgiveness. "We are so sorry," they said. "We accused you unjustly. Please, let us take back the child and clear your name." The monk, still holding the same quiet grace, handed them the baby and once again said only, "Is that so?" No resentment, no anger, no defense, just the simple acceptance of what had been. This story has been told for centuries in many traditions because it captures something timeless about the human heart. It shows how misunderstanding can twist truth into falsehood and how easily judgment can arise when the mind is clouded by fear or pride. But above all, it reveals the strength of a heart that is free from the need to prove itself. The monk's silence was not weakness, it was wisdom. He understood that words, once tangled in the web of rumor, could not easily untie the knots of misunderstanding. He saw that sometimes explaining oneself only feeds the flames of confusion. Instead, he chose the path of stillness, the path of patience, of letting time and truth unfold naturally. When we hear this story, it is easy to imagine how painful it must have been to be falsely accused. Most of us would feel a wave of anger or a desperate urge to defend ourselves. We might speak loudly, insisting on being understood, or even strike back at those who hurt us. But the monk's calm response teaches something profound. Peace does not depend on being believed by others. It depends on knowing our own heart. His words, "Is that so?" are more than a phrase. They are a mirror of equanimity. In those 3 simple words lies a lifetime of practice. He did not deny what was said, nor did he affirm it. He did not argue, nor did he retreat in bitterness. He simply met life as it came, moment by moment, without clinging to praise or blame. In the end, the truth revealed itself, not because he fought for it, but because truth has its own quiet power. It needs no defense. Just as clouds eventually move to reveal the sun, falsehoods fade when the light of time and integrity shines through. This story is not meant to tell us that we must always stay silent when we are wronged. The Buddha himself taught that communication, when done with compassion and clarity, can heal misunderstandings. But he also reminded us that discernment is key. There are times when explaining will bring peace and understanding, and there are times when words will only deepen the wound. The wisdom lies in knowing the difference. The monk in the story embodied what the Buddha called upekkha, equanimity. It is the calm balance that comes when the mind no longer swings wildly between the extremes of approval and rejection. When we rest in equanimity, we see that others' opinions, though painful, do not define who we are. We stop chasing after validation or fleeing from blame. Instead, we become like the still lake that reflects both sunlight and storm without losing its depth. Many stories from the Buddha's time reflect this same truth. Even the Buddha himself was sometimes misunderstood, even accused. There were those who doubted his wisdom or tried to challenge his teachings. Yet he met each challenge with gentleness, never trying to force belief. When people came to him with accusations, he answered not with anger, but with clarity and compassion. He understood that every being acts according to their level of awareness, and that arguing with ignorance only multiplies suffering. In the story of the monk, the villagers eventually realized their mistake, but the lesson was not for them alone. It is for all of us who live in a world where misunderstanding is inevitable. Sooner or later, we will be seen in a way that does not reflect who we truly are. We will be judged unfairly, misheard, or misrepresented. The question then becomes, how do we respond? We can see that the monk's silence was not about indifference, but about choosing peace over pride. He accepted that the situation, as painful as it was, had come through the unfolding of karma. The Buddha called this residual karma, old causes that have ripened in the present moment. Instead of asking, "Why me?" the monk understood, this too has a reason. By responding with compassion rather than resistance, he ended the cycle of harm right there. That is the power of a peaceful heart. It stops the chain of reaction. It refuses to return anger for anger or blame for blame. Like the monk, we can learn to trust that truth will find its way, even if it takes time. And when the villagers came to apologize, he did not hold on to resentment. He did not remind them of their cruelty or demand their remorse. He simply let things be as they were. Is that so? A statement, a question, and a letting go all at once. If we look deeply, we can see that this story is not only about silence, but also about faith. Faith in truth, in time, and in the deeper wisdom of the heart. It reminds us that peace cannot be forced. It can only be lived. There will always be misunderstandings in life. We cannot control how others see us or what they choose to believe, but we can choose how we respond. We can meet confusion with calm, cruelty with compassion, and falsehood with the quiet confidence of knowing our own truth. When we do this, we begin to touch the same stillness the monk carried within him, a stillness born not of passivity, but of understanding. For he knew what the Buddha knew, that truth, like water, always finds its level. It may take time, but it never fails to return to its place of clarity. And so, In every misunderstanding, the practice is not to fight against what others think, but to return home to our own heart, to rest in the calm, knowing that who we are does not depend on what is said about us. This is how we learn, as the monk did, to walk through the dust of the world with a peaceful mind and a heart unshaken by the storms of opinion. Part 2. The teaching, the wisdom of speaking, and the grace of silence. The Buddha once said, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." In that simple sentence lies the heart of discernment, the ability to know when words can heal and when silence can protect. Misunderstandings are inevitable in human life. They arise because each of us sees the world through the lens of our own experiences, memories, and emotions. No two people ever see the same thing in the same way. What feels like truth to one may look like error to another. This is not because people are bad, but because perception is limited. The Buddha called this limitation ignorance, not as an insult, but as a description of the mind's natural cloudiness. Just as fog blurs the outlines of a mountain, our thoughts and emotions blur the clarity of truth. Because of this, we misunderstand others, and they misunderstand us. But understanding this universal condition can open the door to compassion. When we realize that misperception is part of being human, we stop taking it so personally. We stop fighting every misunderstanding as if it were an attack. Instead, we begin to ask a gentler question. Is this a moment to speak or a moment to listen? The Buddha often used silence as his teaching. He was called the silent sage because he knew that truth is not always born from explanation. There were many times when people came to him with harsh words or false accusations. Instead of arguing, he would sit quietly, letting their anger wash over him like waves over a rock. His silence was not weakness, it was deep strength, born of clarity. He knew that when a person is consumed by emotion, logic cannot reach them. Words in that moment would be like pouring water on oil. They would only make the fire flare higher. So he waited until the heart calmed before he spoke. This is what the Buddha called right speech, one of the steps on the Noble Eightfold Path. Right speech means speaking only when our words meet 4 conditions. They must be true, beneficial, timely, and kind. Even if something is true, if it is said in anger or pride, it will cause harm. Even if something is kind, if it is spoken at the wrong moment, it will not be received. The wise know that truth and timing must walk hand in hand. To practice this, we must learn to pause before speaking. Just one breath between impulse and expression can save us from regret. That breath allows space for wisdom to enter. It is in that pause that we ask ourselves, will my words bring peace, or will they create more confusion? Sometimes the answer calls for gentle explanation, clarifying a misunderstanding with patience and care. Other times, the answer calls for silence, trusting that time and sincerity will reveal the truth on their own. The Buddha gave another image to explain this. He said that trying to convince someone who does not want to listen is like striking a bell with no echo. No matter how hard you hit it, the sound will not resonate. But when the bell is whole, when the listener's mind is open, then even the softest touch produces a beautiful tone. The wise do not strike broken bells. They wait until conditions are right for the sound of truth to be heard. This is not easy. The ego craves to be understood. When we are falsely accused or misjudged, a deep instinct rises within us to defend ourselves. We want to explain, to prove, to be seen as right. But the Buddha taught that the need to be right often leads us further from peace. The more we struggle to be understood by everyone, the more we become entangled in the web of opinions. Even the Buddha himself could not please all hearts. How then could we expect to? True freedom comes when we no longer depend on others' understanding to validate our worth. When we know our own intentions are pure, we can rest in that knowledge like a quiet flame that needs no wind to keep it alive. This is the wisdom of silence. It is not the silence of suppression or fear, but the silence of confidence, the trust that truth, like the sun, will rise again in its own time. And yet, silence must not become indifference. There are times when words are needed, when explaining with kindness can heal a rift, prevent harm, or comfort a wounded heart. The Buddha encouraged open dialogue when it came from compassion. He said that when two people meet in understanding, their words become a bridge rather than a weapon. To explain ourselves, when done with love and patience, is not an act of pride. It is an act of care. It says, "I want peace between us. I want you to see my heart." Discernment, then, is the key. The Buddha described this as upaya, skillful means. It is the wisdom to choose what helps, moment by moment. When we speak, we can ask ourselves, is this the time? Is this person ready to hear? Am I speaking from love or from the desire to win? These quiet reflections bring awareness to our words. When speech arises from awareness, it carries the fragrance of peace. Sometimes, even when we speak clearly, others may still not understand. The Buddha said that this too must be accepted. Each being has their own journey, their own ripening of understanding. We cannot force a seed to bloom before its season. All we can do is offer truth gently, like sunlight, and allow time to do the rest. The fruit of truth ripens slowly, but it always ripens. This teaching also applies inwardly. Many times, we misunderstand ourselves. We blame, criticize, or doubt our own worth. The same wisdom that guides us to speak gently to others also asks us to speak kindly to our own hearts. When we notice our inner dialogue becoming harsh, we can practice right speech within. We can replace "I am not enough" with "I am learning." We can replace "I should have known better" with "Now I understand more deeply." The Buddha taught that every moment is a chance to begin again, and that includes how we speak to ourselves. There is a quiet liberation that comes when we stop needing to fight every misunderstanding. The energy that was once spent on explaining and defending becomes available for understanding and compassion. We begin to see that every misunderstanding, no matter how painful, offers an invitation to grow in patience. It teaches us to rest in the truth of our own being. The Buddha once told his disciples that a wise person is like a mirror of clear water, still, reflective, and unshaken by what passes above. The dust of others' opinions may settle for a while, but it cannot stain the depths. When the winds of gossip or judgment blow, the wise remain steady, knowing that storms pass and clarity always returns. In this way, the practice of speaking and silence is not about control, but about harmony. It is the art of responding to life with mindfulness instead of reaction. We begin to see that every situation calls for its own medicine. Sometimes that medicine is the balm of words. Other times it is the calm of quiet presence. When we live this way, even misunderstandings become part of the path. They no longer pull us into conflict, but guide us toward greater wisdom. We learn to listen deeply, to speak gently, and to trust the silence between words. In the end, both speaking and silence become expressions of the same truth, the peace of a heart that no longer needs to win, but only to love. Part 3. The practice, meeting misunderstanding with compassion. Every human heart knows the sting of being misunderstood. It can happen in a single careless word, a misread expression, or a story told by someone who never truly knew us. When it happens, the mind fills with waves of confusion. Why would they think that? How could they believe something so wrong? In those moments, it feels as though the ground beneath us has shifted. We long to be seen clearly, to be understood. Yet, as the Buddha gently reminded his followers, understanding is not something we can demand from others. It must unfold naturally, as a flower opens to the sunday. To live wisely amid misunderstanding is to learn the art of soft response, to remain kind even when others are not, to remain steady even when falsely judged. The Buddha once said that anger cannot be overcome by anger. It is only love that heals hatred. This is not a command to suppress emotion, but an invitation to transform it. When we are misunderstood, it is natural to feel pain, but we can meet that pain with awareness instead of reaction. Awareness allows the heart to breathe. It helps us step back and see the bigger picture. That misunderstanding is not a personal failure, but a shared part of being human. In daily life, this practice begins with a pause. When someone misjudges you, the first instinct may be to explain quickly or defend yourself. But before responding, take one mindful breath. Feel the body. Notice the pulse of emotion in your chest. A single breath can be the bridge between confusion and clarity. It gives you the space to ask, is this a moment to explain or a moment to be still? That pause is the beginning of wisdom. If your heart senses that the other person is open, that they are genuinely seeking to understand, then gentle words can heal. But if their mind is closed, if they only wish to argue or accuse, then silence may be the greater act of compassion. Speaking into a wall of resistance often deepens the wall itself. Silence, on the other hand, allows space for reflection. It plants the seed of understanding without forcing it to bloom. The Buddha often used simple metaphors to describe this truth. He said that when the wind blows across a calm lake, the water reflects the sky perfectly. But when the water is disturbed, the reflection is broken. In the same way, when we meet others in a state of agitation, our words cannot reach them clearly. The practice, then, is to wait until the waters of the mind settle. Only then can truth be seen. Still, silence does not mean turning away. It means listening more deeply to the other person, but also to ourselves. What is this moment teaching me? What emotion is rising in my own heart? Every misunderstanding is an opportunity to practice patience and self-awareness. When we meet misunderstanding without hardening, we begin to grow in strength and grace. This is the essence of right understanding, seeing that others' words and actions are shaped by their own pain, their own conditioning, their own fears. When someone lashes out or assumes the worst of us, it often has little to do with who we are, and much to do with what they carry within. The Buddha taught that people act from their level of consciousness. Those still caught in confusion see through the haze of confusion. Knowing this, we can respond not with bitterness, but with compassion. We can see their misunderstanding as a symptom of suffering, not as an insult. One of the Buddha's disciples once asked, "Master, when someone speaks ill of you, do you not feel pain?" The Buddha replied, "If you hand someone a gift and they refuse to take it, to whom does the gift belong?" The disciple answered, "To the one who offered it." The Buddha smiled and said, "Then, when someone offers you anger and you do not accept it, it still belongs to them." This teaching is one of the most powerful medicines for the heart. It reminds us that we do not have to carry the weight of others' judgments. When we refuse to take in the poison of anger or misunderstanding, it cannot harm us. It remains where it began. The more we practice this, the freer we become. To bring this into our modern lives, we can begin with small steps. When someone misreads our intentions, we can try responding with gentleness instead of defensiveness. A calm tone, a simple, "I understand why you might see it that way," or even a quiet smile can shift the energy of an entire conversation. If explanation feels necessary, let it come from the wish to connect, not from the need to win. The goal is not to prove the other wrong, but to bring light where confusion lives. There are also moments when explanation is not needed at all. When gossip spreads, when a stranger misjudges you, or when a situation lies beyond repair, silence can become your offering of peace. The Buddha often describes such silence as the roar of the lion. It is not weakness but dignity, the silence of someone who no longer needs the world's approval to feel whole. Living this way requires courage, for the world often mistakes quiet strength for passivity. But the wise know that true courage lies not in shouting louder, but in standing still with a heart that does not harden. Each time we choose calm over reaction, patience over pride, we become a vessel of peace in a noisy world. In time, people may come to see the truth of who we are, but even if they do not, our heart remains unshaken. The Buddha reminded his followers that everything changes. Those who misunderstand us today may see clearly tomorrow, and even if they never do, it is enough that we understand ourselves. To know that our intentions are rooted in kindness, that is the real freedom. When misunderstanding arises within families or close relationships, the practice deepens even more. It asks us to listen before speaking, to hold the other person's pain as we would hold a fragile bird. Explaining with gentleness can bring clarity, but explaining with frustration only builds distance. Compassion is not agreement, it is presence. It means staying open even when another heart has closed. Over time, we begin to see that every misunderstanding, no matter how painful, is an invitation to awaken, to see the impermanent nature of opinion, to loosen our attachment to reputation, to discover a peace that does not depend on being right. The Buddha taught that the one who conquers the need to defend the self has already won the greatest battle. So, when misunderstanding visits you, let it become your teacher. Breathe deeply and remind yourself, this is not a punishment, but an opportunity to practice love in its highest form. The kind of love that does not need to be understood, to remain gentle, the kind of peace that no rumor can disturb, the kind of silence that speaks louder than 1,000 words. And when you can, offer understanding to others, even when they cannot offer it to you. Be like the earth that bears both clean water and waste, yet remains steady beneath all things. The Buddha once said, "As the great ocean tastes of salt, so too does my teaching taste of freedom." Freedom comes not from being seen perfectly by others, but from seeing clearly ourselves. To live this teaching is to move through the world with an open heart, ready to speak when speech brings peace, and ready to be silent when silence protects it. In doing so, we walk the middle path between pride and passivity, between defensiveness and indifference. We learn to trust the rhythm of truth, to let it reveal itself without force, and in that trust, even misunderstanding becomes sacred. It ceases to be an obstacle and becomes a mirror, showing us where our compassion is still growing, where our patience still deepens, and where our peace can shine more fully. When we understand this, we no longer fear being misunderstood. We simply continue to live truthfully, gently, and awake, knowing that silence and speech, both, can be acts of love. Chapter 3. The leftover karma, when old seeds still bear fruit. Sometimes, even when we have changed, old shadows seem to follow us. We live kindly, yet troubles still appear. We make peace, yet suffering still finds its way. The Buddha called this residual karma, the remaining effects of past actions that have not yet ripened. Understanding this truth helps us stop asking, "Why me?" and start seeing each challenge as the gentle unfolding of lessons we once began. Part 1. The story, the monk who faced his residual karma. There is a story from the Buddha's time about a monk who lived a simple and sincere life. He had left behind his possessions, his status, and his old mistakes. His days were filled with quiet meditation and acts of kindness. Yet, even in his gentle way of living, he often found himself the subject of harsh rumors and unfounded accusations. Wherever he went, someone seemed to misunderstand him, to criticize or blame him for things he never did. The younger monks could not understand it. They saw how pure his conduct was and how peacefully he lived. They came to the Buddha and said, "Master, this monk has done no harm. Why does he suffer such injustice? Why do people treat him with such cruelty?" The Buddha listened quietly, as he always did. Then he said, "In a distant past, this very monk was once a man of power and influence. He had a sharp tongue and a prideful mind. He enjoyed mocking those who were weak and spreading stories that caused pain. In time, he saw the harm he had done and began to repent. But though the mind had changed, the seeds he had planted were still in the soil of karma. And now, those seeds are ripening." The monk sat in silence, absorbing the teaching. The Buddha continued, "When a person truly reforms their life, their new actions begin to plant wholesome seeds. But the old seeds that have not yet borne fruit will still sprout when conditions are right. This is what we call residual karma, the echoes of past causes that have yet to fade." The Buddha then smiled softly and added, "Do not be saddened by this. The monk's suffering is not punishment, it is purification. When the last of these seeds ripen, his field will be clean. The fragrance of his virtue will remain, and his peace will not be disturbed again." The story offers a glimpse into one of the most tender truths of Buddhist understanding, that cause and effect are never lost, but they are never cruel either. Karma is not a system of divine judgment, it is the natural unfolding of energy, the continuation of action through time. Every word, thought, and deed carries momentum, and when the right conditions arise, that momentum manifests as experience. In the story, the monk's past cruelty had long ended, yet its vibrations still moved through the world. The echoes of those actions found him again, not because he was bad, but because the universe is precise. The Buddha compared karma to a shadow. It follows us wherever we go, not to haunt us, but to remind us that light and form are inseparable. Even those who have awakened must pass through the ripening of their past actions. The Buddha himself faced the pain of slander and betrayal, not because he lacked wisdom, but because the human body and world remain governed by natural law. Enlightenment frees the mind from bondage, but the body still lives within the field of causes and effects. The difference is that the enlightened one no longer suffers because of them. They see karma as weather, something that comes and goes without defining who they are. In one of the sutras, the Buddha told his disciples that a wise person experiences pain like an arrow that strikes only once, while the unwise suffer as if struck twice. once by the event itself and once by their reaction to it. The monk in the story endured his hardships with calm acceptance, feeling only the single arrow of circumstance, not the second arrow of resistance. His equanimity turned pain into practice. Stories like this are not meant to frighten or discourage. They are reminders of continuity, that nothing disappears, but nothing lasts forever either. The pain we meet today may have been born, long ago, from thoughts or deeds we cannot even recall. Yet when we meet that pain with awareness, we stop the cycle from continuing. We stop planting new seeds of resentment or anger. There is a gentleness in the Buddha's way of explaining karma. He never used fear to teach, only clarity. He wanted his followers to see that every experience, even hardship, contains both a cause and an opportunity. When we understand this, we no longer feel like victims of fate. Instead, we become participants in the great rhythm of life, where everything is a teacher. The monk in the story eventually became known for his calm presence. Those who once slandered him began to feel uneasy in his silence. His patience was not weakness. It reflected a strength they could not yet understand. Over time, as his calm never wavered, their hostility faded. Some of them even sought his forgiveness, recognizing in him a peace that no amount of anger could disturb. The Buddha praised this outcome and said to his disciples, "See how the river clears itself when the storm has passed. So too does the heart clear when resentment ends." The ripening of karma is not to be feared, for when it is met with understanding, it leads to freedom. This story speaks deeply to the quiet truth of human experience. We all have our own residual karma, our unseen echoes that surface as difficulties in life. Sometimes, when we are kind yet misunderstood, generous yet unappreciated, it can feel unfair. But life is not unfair, it is exact. The universe returns to us not what we deserve, but what we need to awaken. Each event invites us to see more clearly, to act more wisely, and to love more deeply. It is said that when the monk later attained liberation, he reflected on his life and smiled. He understood that every painful moment had been a teacher. Every accusation, every trial, had polished his heart like a stone shaped by the river's current. The suffering did not destroy him, it refined him. The Buddha's teachings remind us that the past is not a chain to bind us, but a mirror to help us see. The causes we have set in motion are already unfolding, yet we are free in how we meet them. That freedom, our response, our awareness, our compassion, is where transformation happens. If we can see karma, not as punishment, but as continuation, then even the hardest days become part of our spiritual practice. When storms come, we do not curse the rain. We understand that it falls because clouds must release their weight before the sky can clear. In the same way, difficulties are the release of what has been held too long. When they pass, the mind becomes lighter and the heart more open. The story of the monk is more than a tale about cause and effect. It is a portrait of grace. It shows us that even when old seeds bear fruit, we can meet them with dignity, with patience, and with faith in the law of truth. Every pain we face is temporary, but every act of understanding leaves a trace of peace that lasts far longer. And so, when we find ourselves in the midst of hardship, we can remember the monk's quiet strength. We can whisper to ourselves, "This too is a seed ripening. Let me meet it well." In that simple remembrance, suffering softens, and what once felt like a curse begins to look like the gentle unfolding of wisdom. Part 2. The teaching, understanding the law of cause and effect. The Buddha once described karma as a field of seeds. Each thought, word, and action we plant in that field will eventually bear its own fruit. The timing of the harvest cannot be controlled, for the ripening depends on countless conditions: the soil, the rain, the light, the passing of time. In the same way, the consequences of our actions, good or bad, come to maturity only when the conditions are right. That is why a person can live kindly and yet still encounter suffering. The old seeds, the ones planted long ago, have not yet finished their season. The law of karma is simple, but it is also profoundly subtle. It does not function as a system of reward or punishment. It is not governed by judgment or fate. It is simply the natural law of balance. Every action leaves an imprint in the fabric of consciousness. Those imprints remain dormant until something awakens them, just as a seed rests in the soil until the rain arrives. When we understand this, life's difficulties no longer feel arbitrary. They reveal themselves as natural consequences of past causes, returning not to condemn us, but to help us see more clearly. The Buddha often used gentle analogies to help his disciples grasp this truth. He said that if a man drops salt into a small cup of water, the water becomes undrinkable. But if he drops the same amount of salt into a vast river, the river remains pure and sweet. In the same way, when the heart is small, narrow, resentful, self-centered, even a single moment of hardship overwhelms it. But when the heart expands with understanding, compassion, and mindfulness, even the bitterness of karma is softened. The taste of suffering changes. It no longer poisons us, it purifies us. This is the deeper purpose of karma, not to repay or punish, but to awaken. The Buddha called it the teacher of all beings. When we meet the fruits of our actions, whether pleasant or painful, they reveal the tendencies of our mind. We begin to see where we still cling, where we still resist, where we still act from ignorance or fear. Every moment of experience becomes a mirror reflecting our inner landscape. If we look carefully, with patience and honesty, we discover what still needs to be understood and released. Yet, even with this wisdom, it can be hard not to ask, why do good people suffer? The Buddha answered this question many times, explaining that karma is not linear. A person may be kind and generous now, but if their past actions carried harm, those effects may still unfold. In the same way, someone may act selfishly today and still appear to prosper for a time because their past good deeds are bearing fruit. What matters is not the immediate appearance of fairness, but the long rhythm of balance that eventually restores harmony. The Buddha said, "No deed, however small, is ever lost. Every smile, every word of kindness, every act of patience, these too are seeds, and they too will ripen." The law of karma does not forget goodness. It simply waits for the right season. That is why the Buddha encouraged his followers never to lose faith, even when life feels unjust. What you do with a clear heart will return to you in peace. Karma also extends beyond the individual. Families, communities, and even nations share collective karma, the accumulation of actions over generations. Just as the rain falls on an entire forest, the results of shared actions affect everyone within it. This is why compassion matters, not only for our own peace, but for the peace of the world. When we speak or act with awareness, we plant seeds that contribute to harmony for countless others. In this way, karma is not only personal, it is universal. The teaching of karma also reminds us of impermanence. Every cause, no matter how painful, will end once its fruit has ripened. There is no eternal curse, no endless suffering. What continues endlessly is only the cycle of reaction. our habit of responding to pain with more pain. When we stop reacting and start observing, the cycle begins to dissolve. The fruit falls, the seed breaks open, and new growth becomes possible. The Buddha taught that the wise respond to karma not with despair, but with mindfulness. When joy arises, they enjoy it without clinging. When pain arises, they endure it without resentment. They understand that both pleasure and suffering are passing clouds. Beneath them lies the open sky of awareness, the part of us that remains untouched by circumstance. This awareness is where freedom begins. In the Abhidharma, an ancient Buddhist text, it is said that karma operates on 4 levels of time. Some actions bear fruit immediately, some in this lifetime, some in future lives, and some in distant ages when conditions align. The complexity of this web is beyond human calculation, which is why speculation, trying to trace every misfortune to a specific cause, only leads to confusion. Instead of asking, "What did I do to deserve this?" the Buddha advised us to ask, "What can I learn from this now?" That single question transforms suffering into wisdom. It turns karma from a weight into a path. Each painful experience becomes an invitation to practice patience, forgiveness, and humility. Each joyful experience becomes a reminder to share our blessings and cultivate gratitude. In this way, the flow of karma becomes a river that leads us home, rather than a tide that sweeps us away. The Buddha also emphasized that new karma is being created in every moment. The present is both the fruit of the past and the seed of the future. What we choose now, our thoughts, our words, our actions, will determine the quality of tomorrow's experiences. Understanding this gives us tremendous power. Even if we cannot erase the seeds already sown, we can plant new ones that will bring sweetness later. Kindness heals old bitterness. Wisdom untangles old confusion. Patience transforms old anger. The Buddha said, "If you want to know your past, look at your present. If you want to know your future, look at your present actions." The present moment is the meeting point of all timelines, the place where cause and effect dance together. When we act with awareness, we change the pattern. We interrupt the old rhythm of reaction and begin to live from intention instead of impulse. Sometimes karma feels heavy because we carry it with resistance. We see hardship and immediately label it as bad. But when we view it with understanding, its nature changes. The same event that once caused resentment becomes a moment of awakening. The Buddha taught that there is no suffering that cannot be transformed into wisdom when met with the right attitude. Pain without understanding leads to despair. Pain with understanding leads to compassion. So the heart of the teaching is this: karma is not fixed destiny, but a dynamic process. We are never trapped by the past. Each breath, each choice, is an opening. Every time we forgive, every time we choose patience over anger, every time we refrain from causing harm, we shift the flow of energy in the universe. We begin to rewrite our story. In this light, the monk's suffering from old karma was not a tragedy, but a purification. The flames that once burned him became the fire that refined him. And when the last residue of those old actions was gone, what remained was only peace. The same possibility exists for each of us. When life feels heavy or unfair, we can remember the law of cause and effect, not as a burden, but as a promise that everything we do matters and that no goodness is ever wasted. The fruits of the past may still ripen, but so will the blossoms of the present. With understanding, we can meet every moment with calm faith, knowing that what we plant in awareness will someday bloom in joy. Part 3. The practice. meeting life's difficulties with understanding. When hardship arrives, our first instinct is often resistance. We tighten, we question, we say to ourselves, "This shouldn't be happening." Yet the Buddha taught that the moment we stop fighting what is, we begin to awaken. The practice of meeting karma with understanding starts right here, in the shift from resistance to acceptance. Acceptance does not mean passivity or giving up. It means looking directly at the situation without denial or resentment, seeing it as part of the natural unfolding of life. In this way, acceptance becomes strength, not surrender. When something painful happens, perhaps an illness, a loss, or a betrayal, it is easy to fall into self-pity or blame. But instead of asking, "Why me?" the Buddha encouraged us to ask, "What can I learn from this?" That single change in perspective transforms the energy completely. We move from being a victim of life to being a student of it. Life, in its wisdom, sends us lessons in many forms. Sometimes the lessons come gently, sometimes through pain, but always with the potential to free us from ignorance. The practice begins with awareness. When a difficult moment arises, we pause and breathe. We feel what is happening in the body, the tightening of the chest, the racing of the mind, and we simply notice. Awareness is the light that reveals the truth of experience. Without awareness, we react blindly, repeating the same patterns again and again. With awareness, we begin to see how pain arises and passes, how anger grows and dissolves, how every emotion is impermanent. In that seeing, compassion is born. We realize that suffering is not unique to us. It is part of the shared human condition. Everyone carries their own weight of karma, their own invisible burdens. When we recognize this, our heart softens, not only toward ourselves, but toward others. We begin to understand that even those who hurt us are also struggling with their own unfinished seeds. Compassion does not excuse harm, but it helps us respond without adding more. The Buddha compared the practice of understanding karma to tending a fire. When anger arises, it is like a flame. If we feed it with more anger, through blame, complaint, or revenge, it burns hotter and longer. But if we stop feeding it, if we simply let it burn out naturally, it fades on its own. Every time we refrain from reacting, we cool the fire of karma. We stop the chain of cause and effect from continuing into the future. One of the most beautiful practices for transforming karma is forgiveness. Forgiveness is not a gift we give to others. It is a release we offer to ourselves. Holding resentment is like gripping a burning coal. It only hurts the one who holds it. The Buddha once said, "Hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone it ceases." When we forgive, we are not denying that harm occurred. We are choosing not to let that harm define or poison our heart. Forgiveness also includes forgiving ourselves. Many people carry silent guilt for past actions or mistakes, but the Buddha taught that genuine remorse and mindful living are enough to purify the mind. What keeps us bound is not the action itself, but our refusal to let go of it. To forgive oneself is to recognize that who we were then is not who we are now. Awareness, not punishment, leads to transformation. Another practice for meeting karma wisely is patience. Patience, in the Buddhist sense, is not passive endurance. It is gentle strength. It is the ability to remain steady through the storms of change. When karma ripens, when old seeds bear fruit, patience keeps us from despair. It reminds us that every experience has its season. Just as winter eventually gives way to spring, pain too has its time to pass. The Buddha said that patience is the highest form of asceticism, more powerful than fasting or physical discipline. Why? Because it demands that we surrender control, that we trust the timing of life. To be patient is to let the river of karma flow through without trying to dam it. It means we stop asking when or why and simply keep walking with mindfulness. Each step forward becomes an act of faith, a quiet trust in the law of cause and effect, and in our own capacity to grow. Mindfulness and patience together create space for insight. Over time, we start to see how our reactions shape our reality. We realize that pain becomes heavier when we add stories to it, when we think, "This always happens to me," or "I'll never be happy." These thoughts are new seeds of suffering. When we notice them and let them go, we stop planting those seeds. We begin to live from presence rather than habit. To live this way is to take responsibility without self-blame. It is to recognize that while we cannot control what has already been set in motion, we can always choose how we meet it. This is the heart of Buddhist practice, the freedom to respond with wisdom instead of reaction. When something difficult arises, we can silently remind ourselves, this is the fruit of a past cause. It is coming to completion. I do not need to create more. This perspective brings a deep peace, even in the middle of pain. The suffering still arises, but we stop multiplying it. We no longer add the second arrow, the arrow of mental struggle. Instead, we meet the first arrow with mindfulness and compassion. The experience becomes lighter, easier to hold. In time, we even begin to feel gratitude because we see how every difficulty refines us. The Buddha's teaching on karma is not meant to make us passive or fatalistic. It empowers us to live consciously. Every act of kindness we perform, every moment of restraint, every breath of awareness plants a new seed for peace. Even in the midst of hardship, we can choose to act in ways that bring light rather than darkness. This is how karma is transformed, not by wishing it away, but by meeting it wisely. Imagine a field covered with weeds. If we simply curse the weeds, they remain. But if we plant flowers among them and tend those flowers patiently, over time the field transforms. The weeds may still appear, but their presence no longer dominates. In the same way, our old karma may still ripen, but it no longer defines our life. The beauty of new understanding begins to grow stronger than the remnants of the past. When we see life through this lens, even suffering becomes sacred. Every challenge becomes a reminder that we are still learning, still unfolding, still capable of awakening. The Buddha said that the wise see adversity as the teacher that ignorance cannot destroy. When we meet our karma with awareness, we turn obstacles into opportunities, and we begin to live with the quiet confidence of someone who trusts the law of truth. In the end, to meet difficulties with understanding is to meet life itself with love. It is to say, "Yes, I see you," to every experience, pleasant or painful, and to hold it with a heart wide enough to include it all. When we live this way, we are no longer afraid of what ripens. We understand that every moment, even the hardest one, is simply another wave returning to the ocean of awakening. And in that ocean, nothing is wasted, nothing is lost. Everything becomes part of the great flow toward freedom. You are listening to a gentle teaching from the Moonlight Temple series, wisdom drawn from ancient Buddhist roots, brought to life with care and presence. To fully receive the heart of these teachings, I invite you now to pause. Soften the edges of your day. Let your body rest. Take in a slow, quiet breath and exhale into stillness. Allow your awareness to return, not to the past, not to the future, but to this very moment. Nothing else is required. Just your presence. If this offering has brought you a moment of peace, we gently invite you to support this journey by subscribing to the Moonlight Temple, sharing these teachings, or simply returning again when your heart needs rest. Every small act of presence helps this temple of silence grow. Chapter 4. The Weight of Recognition. When Fame Invites Envy. Part 1. The Story. Even the Buddha was misunderstood. During his lifetime, even the Buddha, one of the most peaceful and compassionate beings to ever walk the earth, was not free from envy and slander. His teachings drew countless followers, kings and beggars alike, and his presence brought calm wherever he went. Yet, for some, his light felt like a threat. His influence, his clarity, his growing community, all became reasons for others to resent him. One well-known story from the Buddhist texts tells of a woman named Sundari, who was beautiful and clever but easily manipulated by a group of jealous ascetics. They could not accept the Buddha's growing reputation and sought to destroy it. They convinced her to pretend she visited the Buddha's monastery each evening, making it appear as though she stayed overnight. Soon, rumors spread, whispers that the Buddha was not as pure as people believed. The gossip moved quickly, as gossip always does. People began to doubt. Even some of his followers felt confusion in their hearts. The Buddha, however, remained calm. He did not argue or rush to defend himself. He continued teaching as usual, knowing that truth, like the sun, eventually reveals itself no matter how long the night lasts. Days later, Sundari's lifeless body was found near the monastery. The jealous ascetics had taken her life and placed the blame upon the Buddha and his monks. Crowds gathered in anger, demanding punishment. The monks, terrified, asked the Buddha what they should do. He simply said, "Endure. Do not react in anger. The truth will rise in time." And so, they endured. For 7 days, they faced abuse and humiliation. But as the investigation unfolded, the truth emerged. The real culprits were discovered, and the Buddha's innocence was proven. When the storm passed, his calmness became his greatest teaching. His silence through injustice revealed a strength that words could never express. This story captures a universal truth. When light shines brightly, shadows appear. The Buddha's goodness did not protect him from envy. It simply revealed the depth of his patience and understanding. Even perfection invites projection, because not all hearts are ready to accept light without comparison. The Buddha never sought fame, yet it found him, and with fame came misunderstanding, jealousy, and criticism. He knew that such reactions were part of the natural order of things. As the great mountain stands unshaken by the wind, he once said, so too does the wise remain, unmoved by praise or blame. For the Buddha, both admiration and criticism were equally unreliable. Neither praise defined him, nor blame diminished him. He understood that the opinions of others belonged to them, not to the one being spoken about. Throughout the Buddhist scriptures, there are many instances of envy directed toward the Buddha and his disciples. Rival teachers accused him of stealing students. Wealthy families sometimes criticized him for accepting alms. Some even plotted against him, out of fear that their influence would fade. Each time, the Buddha responded with patience and compassion, never with bitterness. He knew that jealousy was born from misunderstanding, a reflection of suffering in those who could not see clearly. The Buddha once told his monks that envy arises when people compare themselves to others. When we measure our worth by another's success, peace becomes impossible. This comparison, he said, is the beginning of suffering. Instead of trying to shine by dimming someone else's light, we must learn to see the beauty in every star. The sky is wide enough for all to shine. In ancient times, the bamboo plant became a powerful symbol in Buddhist culture. It grows tall and straight, yet its hollow core reminds us of humility. When strong winds blow, bamboo bends rather than breaks. It endures cold winters and still stands green when other plants wither. The Buddha's life mirrored this image. His humility was his strength. His flexibility was his protection. The winds of slander came and went, but he remained upright, deeply rooted in truth. The story of the Buddha's endurance teaches us that no one is immune to judgment or envy. Goodness itself can trigger discomfort in those who have not yet found peace within. Yet, we are not here to control others' reactions. We are here to walk our path sincerely. The Buddha's example shows that it is not the presence of envy that matters, but our response to it. When faced with false accusations, the Buddha neither explained endlessly nor withdrew in despair. He remained steady, knowing that truth does not require constant defense. Like clear water muddied by stones, his integrity simply waited for time to settle the dust. This quiet strength, this refusal to be swayed by the world's praise or blame, became one of his most profound lessons. Over the centuries, this story has been retold as a reminder for all who do good work, for all who stand in the light. To be visible is to be vulnerable. To be recognized is to be tested. The more influence one has, the more easily envy is awakened in others. But this is not a reason to hide our goodness. The Buddha did not stop teaching because of slander. He continued to serve, anchored in compassion, knowing that integrity is not measured by others' approval. Just as bamboo bows gracefully before the wind, the wise bow before life's challenges. Their humility does not come from weakness, but from understanding that everything passes: praise, blame, fame, loss. When we learn to bend without breaking, to stay soft when the world turns sharp, we embody the same quiet resilience that the Buddha lived. And perhaps this is the deeper meaning of enlightenment: not to escape the world, but to remain in it, without being disturbed by its storms. The Buddha's life was filled with both reverence and rejection, yet he met each moment with equanimity. His calmness in the face of envy was not detachment, it was love without condition, peace without pride. When we hear this story, we are reminded that no amount of goodness can protect us from being misunderstood, but it can protect us from losing ourselves in reaction. The Buddha's silence was not emptiness, it was full of understanding. His patience was not weakness, it was the fruit of profound awareness. He showed that even in a world of noise, one can live like bamboo, straight, humble, and unbroken. The story invites us to look at our own lives with gentleness. Whenever we feel envied, judged, or criticized, we can remember the Buddha's example. We can ask ourselves, can I remain upright yet flexible? Can I respond with understanding rather than defense? These questions lead us back to stillness, to the inner calm that no storm can shake. In the end, the story of the Buddha's endurance is not only about surviving envy, it is about transcending it. It shows us that the truest strength lies not in power, but in humility, not in controlling others' opinions, but in knowing who we truly are. Like bamboo rooted deeply in the earth, the awakened heart stands tall, not because it seeks the sky, but because it has learned how to bow. Part 2. The teaching, the middle way between praise and blame. The Buddha often reminded his followers that life moves in cycles: gain and loss, fame and obscurity, praise and blame. None of these states are permanent. They rise and fall like waves on the ocean. To cling to praise or resist blame is to be tossed about by the tides. True peace, he said, lies in walking the middle way, remaining centered while the winds of opinion blow from every direction. He called this teaching equanimity, the steady balance of a mind that does not rise too high with success, nor fall too low with criticism. The Buddha taught that a wise person sees praise and blame as two sides of the same coin. Both are reflections of others' perceptions, not measures of truth. When people speak well of us, it reveals their appreciation. When they speak ill, it reveals their pain or misunderstanding. In either case, we remain free when we do not internalize their words. This freedom comes from understanding anatta, the teaching of non-self. The Buddha said that what we call self is not a fixed identity but a collection of changing processes, body, feelings, thoughts, perceptions, and consciousness. When we forget this, we cling to reputation as if it defines us. We chase validation to prove our worth. But when we see through the illusion of a permanent self, the opinions of others lose their power to wound or inflate us. Praise no longer makes us proud, and blame no longer makes us defensive. The Buddha used a vivid metaphor to explain this. He said, "When a person throws dirt into the wind, it returns upon them. In the same way, those who speak from envy harm only themselves. To retaliate would be like catching the dirt and rubbing it on our own face. Instead, the wise allow it to fall harmlessly to the ground. Their dignity is not diminished, for it is rooted in understanding, not in approval." The Buddha also warned against the subtle danger of pride that often follows recognition. When others admire our good deeds or talents, it is easy to mistake that admiration for proof of spiritual progress. But the Buddha reminded his monks that even virtue can become a chain if it feeds the ego. He said, "As soon as you think, 'I am better than others,' you have already stepped off the path." True virtue does not shout. It hums quietly like a bamboo grove swaying in the wind, strong, flexible, and humble. The bamboo became a perfect symbol of this humility. It grows tall but never arrogant. It bends gracefully under the wind, never resisting, never breaking. Its hollow center represents emptiness, not emptiness as void, but as openness, the space through which wisdom and compassion flow freely. To live like bamboo is to embody both strength and gentleness, resilience and humility. The Buddha's life exemplified this balance. He faced both honor and humiliation with the same peaceful heart, teaching that integrity is measured not by what happens to us, but by how we remain steady through it. He once told a disciple who struggled with jealousy, "Do not compare yourself to others. Each being blooms in its own season." The Buddha explained that envy arises when we see the success of others as proof of our own lack. But comparison is a misunderstanding of nature itself. The rose does not envy the lotus, and the moon does not compete with the Sunday. Each shines according to its own karma, its own unfolding. To compare is to forget the vastness of the sky that holds them all. This understanding brings compassion to both sides, toward the one envied and the one who envies. Those who receive admiration must learn humility, remembering that all gifts are temporary. Those who feel envy must learn self-kindness, realizing that their pain comes from forgetting their own unique path. The Buddha said that envy burns twice. It harms the one who feels it and those who receive it. But when met with compassion, envy transforms into admiration, and admiration becomes inspiration. To live with recognition, therefore, is to walk carefully. The Buddha taught that influence is not a privilege, but a responsibility. Fame, wealth, or leadership test the heart more deeply than hardship does, because they tempt the ego to believe in its own importance. The wise use recognition as an opportunity to serve, not to be served. They understand that what the world calls success is just another condition that will pass. What truly matters is whether the heart remains kind and humble while walking through it. The Buddha also said that the measure of spiritual maturity is not how much praise one receives, but how one responds to it. When praised, the unwise mind becomes inflated. When criticized, it collapses. But the awakened mind remains spacious, accepting both as passing sounds in the air. In this space, there is room for everything: admiration, misunderstanding, even hostility, and yet nothing can disturb the peace that rests beneath. In one of his discourses, the Buddha told his disciples, "There are 4 winds that blow upon the world: pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame. Those who cling to any of them will suffer." The monks asked, "Master, how then should we live?" The Buddha answered, "Live like the mountain, unmoved yet alive. When rain falls, let it nourish. When winds blow, let them pass." To understand this teaching is to understand freedom. Freedom does not mean isolation or indifference. It means being fully present with life while remaining anchored in awareness. It means caring deeply, but not clinging. It means serving others, but not seeking recognition. When we embody this balance, the inevitable praise and blame of the world become gentle teachers instead of tormentors. Praise reminds us to stay humble. Blame reminds us to stay patient. Both lead us inward, toward the quiet strength that no applause or insult can touch. The Buddha's own serenity in the face of envy was not the result of indifference. It was the fruit of deep understanding. He saw that everyone who criticized him was, in some way, suffering. They too were searching for peace, just in the wrong direction. Seeing this, how could he hate them? His compassion became his protection, and his humility became his refuge. The teaching, then, is clear. We cannot avoid being praised or blamed, but we can learn not to be ruled by either. To live in balance is to live in freedom. To stand tall yet bow gracefully, to shine without pride, to walk through envy without resentment. This is the way of the bamboo and the way of the awakened heart. Part 3. The practice, living humbly amid praise and blame. To live in a world of opinions without losing your peace is one of the highest forms of practice. The Buddha understood this deeply. He never told his followers to escape from society, but to walk within it with awareness, to remain steady like a bamboo grove in the wind. The practice of humility and balance begins with a simple remembrance. Everything that rises will fall, every sound will fade, every opinion will pass. What matters is not how people see you, but how you hold your heart through it all. When you are praised, pause and breathe. Feel gratitude, not pride. Let the words touch you gently, like a breeze moving through leaves, and then let them pass. Praise can be sweet, but sweetness too can intoxicate. If you cling to admiration, it can become a subtle chain, binding you to the approval of others. When people speak well of you, remember that they are responding to a moment in time, a reflection of their own perception. You do not need to hold it tightly. Smile inwardly, give thanks, and stay humble. When you are blamed or misunderstood, pause again. Feel the sting of the moment without resistance. Pain only deepens when we fight it. The Buddha taught that criticism can be a mirror, Sometimes it reflects untruth, and sometimes it reveals what we still need to learn. Listen with an open mind, but don't let every word pierce your heart. Not all voices deserve residence in your mind. Take what is true, release what is false, and wish peace for those who cannot yet see clearly. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking of yourself less. It is the quiet strength that comes from knowing you are part of something larger than the story others tell about you. When we live with humility, we become like water, clear, adaptable, and soft, yet capable of shaping stone. The humble heart does not shrink. It expands to include all things without fear of losing itself. The Buddha often taught that the measure of wisdom is not found in the grand gestures, but in the small, unseen moments. How we respond when no one is watching, how we treat those who cannot return our kindness, how we react when someone else receives the recognition we hoped for. In those quiet tests, our practice reveals itself. Envy, pride, and insecurity all fade when the heart learns to celebrate goodness wherever it appears. If another's success stirs discomfort within you, take it as an invitation to look inward, not outward. The Buddha said that jealousy arises from ignorance of our own beauty. Every being carries a unique brightness. The success of one person does not dim another's light. It simply adds to the radiance of the world. When you remember this, joy becomes shared rather than divided. To cultivate this way of being, mindfulness is essential. The next time someone compliments you or criticizes you, take a breath before reacting. Feel the space between their words and your response. In that space lies freedom, the freedom to choose calm over pride, understanding over defensiveness. This pause, small as it seems, is where practice becomes real. You can also reflect on impermanence. All reputations change with time. Today's admiration may become tomorrow's indifference. The world's memory is short. What endures is not what people think of us, but how we lived, how we treated others, how we met the challenges of the heart. When we rest in this understanding, we no longer chase validation or fear rejection. We live simply and sincerely, doing what we can, letting go of the rest. The Buddha advised his disciples to focus not on fame, but on integrity. Better than 1,000 hollow words, he said, is one word that brings peace. In the same way, better than being loved by many is being at peace with oneself. When you walk with honesty and kindness, your presence becomes its own teaching. Some will admire it, others may envy it, but neither can touch the peace that comes from living truthfully. In daily life, this practice can be as simple as bowing to what is. When someone praises you, bow in gratitude. When someone criticizes you, bow in humility. Bowing does not mean submission. It means remembering that you and the other person are both students of life, both learning from the same vast mystery. Every encounter, pleasant or painful, can refine your understanding if you meet it with awareness. Over time, this practice softens the edges of ego. You begin to see that fame and envy are both temporary shadows moving across the same ground. What remains constant is the stillness beneath them, the quiet knowing that you are not defined by how others see you, but by how clearly you see yourself. When you live this way, even the noise of the world becomes part of your meditation. The chatter of praise and blame fades into the background, like distant waves while you rest beside the ocean. You no longer fear the wind of opinion because you have learned to stand like bamboo, rooted, gentle, and free. And in that freedom, a new kind of joy appears. Not the joy of being admired, but the joy of being authentic. It is the joy of walking through life with a heart that bows to all things yet kneels before none. The joy of knowing that peace does not come from silence in the world, but from silence within. So when envy comes your way, or when the light of recognition shines too brightly, remember this: stay soft, stay humble, and let every praise and criticism be a bell that calls you back to awareness. Then, like the Buddha, you will walk untouched through the winds of the world, awake, kind, and unshaken. Chapter 5. Even a tiny match can bring light. The power of small good deeds. There is a story told in the old Buddhist tradition, simple, tender, and luminous. One night, long ago, the Buddha and his monks were traveling through a forest. The moon had not yet risen, and the path ahead was wrapped in deep darkness. Along the roadside stood a small hut where a poor woman lived alone. She had little to offer, but her heart was generous. Seeing the travelers approach, she lit a small oil lamp and placed it outside her door so they might see their way through the night. When the monks passed by, they noticed the gentle glow from the tiny flame. It did not pierce the vast darkness, yet it made the path before them visible. Later, when they reached their resting place, one monk said, "That woman's lamp was so small, yet it guided our steps." The Buddha smiled softly and said, "Yes, a single flame can light many others without ever losing its own brightness. Never think that a small act of kindness is wasted." The next morning, the woman's lamp had long since burned out, but the story of her kindness spread among the villagers. Some began to leave candles by the road for travelers. Others offered bowls of water or food to those in need. What began as one tiny light became hundreds, and the dark road was never the same again. This story, though simple, reveals one of the most beautiful truths in the Buddha's teaching, that goodness, no matter how small, carries limitless potential. The universe responds to intention more than magnitude. A small act, done with pure heart, ripples farther than grand gestures born of pride. The Buddha once said, "Do not underestimate the power of a single good deed, thinking it too small to matter. Just as rain fills a jar drop by drop, so does virtue grow in those who practice it." We often imagine that to make a difference, we must do something great, build temples, end suffering, change the world. But the Buddha's wisdom points us inward and smaller. Peace begins in the smallest moments. The gentle words spoken to ease another's heart. The patient breath taken instead of an angry reply. The smile offered to a stranger who feels unseen. These tiny lights, together, illuminate the whole world. In the ancient scriptures, there is another story that mirrors this same truth. A poor woman once heard that the Buddha was teaching in her village. She wanted to make an offering, but she had almost nothing, just enough oil for one lamp. Around her, the wealthy were donating great quantities of oil to light the temple courtyard in honor of the Buddha's visit. Feeling embarrassed by her poverty, she hesitated. Yet, in her heart, she wished only to express gratitude and faith. She decided to offer what she could, one small lamp. That night, hundreds of lamps were lit around the temple. By morning, all had gone out, except one. The Buddha's disciples tried to extinguish it, but the flame refused to die. When the Buddha saw this, he said, "This lamp burns with the light of pure intention. The others were lit for merit or reputation, but this one was lit from a heart of sincerity. Its light will shine beyond this life." In both stories, the roadside lamp and the temple offering, the same truth unfolds. It is not the size of the act but the purity of the heart that gives it meaning. The Buddha saw beyond appearances. He taught that good deeds are measured not in visibility but in sincerity. A single act done in mindfulness and love creates a chain reaction of awakening. In Buddhist thought, the universe itself is interdependent. Every action, every thought, every breath affects everything else.